The ideal opportunity to promote rapid change in all spheres of thought and behaviour might be to sandwich them between two wars. Purposefully engineered, of course, unless you believe a prince being shot is enough to persuade the world to take up arms. A large percentage of the young male population killed off, people's very livelihoods, the ability to feed and shelter themselves removed in just 5 years. Beaten to the point of being putty in the hands of the masons and bankers. It's hard not to notice the switch up from a rigid Victorian order, where women and children barely register as citizens, to flappers, jazz music, the bustling, more exciting cities that emerge. Now it goes to the other extreme, women encouraged to do what they want. In fact, everyone should be out having fun and forgetting. Coca-Cola, cigarettes, processed animal and grain products, and alcohol widely promoted and still are today. The peoples are to be allowed some recreation and the freedom to reproduce, but not underpinned with traditional family values. The workers, of course, always continue to do just that. In the factories and offices, no time to think of anything else. Children are still being employed at this stage, very likely taken advantage of. Terror vision had yet to be introduced to the public. I feel that Kay in chapter 1 finds himself caught up and made victim between two worlds. He is still living the life of an Edwardian bachelor. The studio flat, dressing robe, and indispensable older landlady, who also owns and lives in the same building, being brought breakfast at the same time every morning. But it was all already becoming dated, and no protection against the agents of the state, who have entered his space with their paperwork and uniforms. It really does look like a forerunner to what was to happen in Nazi Germany soon after. People's liberties subtly removed by the trickery inherent in a more complex bureaucracy. (1921) Einstein reaches his zenith of popularity, winning the Nobel Prize, aged 42, 4 years older than Kafka, writing articles and being ferried about the Earth plane, specifically the burgeoning world superpower, the United States, giving speeches and generally adored by the media. I wonder how his ideas were being received by actual academics at the time. this career is similar to that of Freud, who, interestingly, may have known Adolf Hitler. A signed watercolour sold for 10,000 British pounds in 2010. It's amazing how these characters seem to know each other. Freud observed of Einstein after meeting him in 1926, quote, "He is serene, assured, and courteous, understands as much psychology as I do physics." And so we had a very pleasant chat. There is little doubt that Freud's shadowy office sessions, looking into people's personal fears and motivations, provided reams of material for the CIA, Disney, and NASA. Interestingly, Einstein refuses surgery in April 1955, probably tired of being blackmailed and pushed around by his handlers, doubtless aware that his own theories were all fictions. His last words were, "It is tasteless to prolong life artificially." Winston Churchill becomes United Kingdom Chancellor in 1924. He had demonstrated genocidal tendencies to be repeated in the going-over-the-top policy during World War II as Prime Minister in the Dardanelles campaign. The attack sent over 500,000, many fresh young recruits from Australia and New Zealand, to their deaths in the bottleneck. The sort of thing put down to an honest mistake. For Churchill had been fast-tracked to Master Mason on the 25th of March 1902, at just 25 years old. Unprecedented. His future surely had been scripted. He is a key player. Churchill was on scene during the Boer War, ostensibly as a journalist, but more likely orchestrating and, where necessary, covering up the atrocities committed there. Despite promoting himself as a liberal, he presses for an expansion of the House of Lords, and therefore the aristocratic bloodlines. Post-World War II, Churchill supports more than anyone the pseudoscience of Einsteinian physics and nuclear armament, stirring up the water for the Cold War, and the fear these vampires feed off and rely on to be obeyed. One such, Queen Elizabeth, has him knighted in 1953. He is only one of two ministerial funerals she attended, January 1965. The last full-blown public funeral until her own death in September 2022. A street procession through London, attended by royalty and presidents of 112 countries. Has and continues to make every attempt to revive confidence in these four persons, despite more information bubbling to the surface. In the 2010 film A Dangerous Method, note the title, Freud is depicted as a sort of rogue, with Jung, Michael Fassbender, as his sidekick. In truth, Jung was the authentic thinker who wanted to take the new science of the mind in an expansive direction, one of imagination and possibility. When Freud and his Jewish/Masonic psychoanalytical clique saw he couldn't be reined in, Freud sends Jung a pompous and ridiculous letter in 1913, officially banning him from the paternal fold. The Darkest Hour came out 2017. In my opinion, intentionally, by far the best mainstream film of the year. Costing $30 million, it grossed at $150 million. Churchill, Gary Oldman, is the beaten down fighter shuffling from number 10 to an underground bunker, gruff and charismatic. Not quite the famous, hate-filled grimace that the real Churchill is famous for. This is clearly a watered-down version. There are a lot of emotive scenes and not many clues as to the actual policies he brought forth during this time. It's amazing how someone like Churchill can make speeches about blood, toil, tears and sweat, and we shall fight on the beaches, while he sits in London getting fat and smoking cigars. In the film Young Einstein, 1988, he is transposed to Australia, an outback hippie who splits atoms with a chisel, makes beer and likes rock music. The technique here is to use humour, music and zany themes that have nothing to do with the real man to lead us astray. Fast forward to 2015. Look who's back. Hitler has time travelled to the 21st century. Instead of addressing the seriousness of the role these figures played, it's like Hollywood wants to make them into caricatures now. As if the things that occurred never did. I propose Hitler may have been the better of the three, precisely because he is given all the blame, a scapegoat. Had he not really experienced the brutality of World War I as a lance corporal, seen the dangers of communism on the rise everywhere in the early 1920s, Hitler introduced some very sensible measures to combat the Great Depression and put Germany, which was the world's #1 economy in 1900, back on its feet. Wage security, self-sufficiency, compensation for women leaving to create more for unemployed working-age men with the marriage loan. I'm guessing the higher-ups, Churchill and Roosevelt, didn't like it. Like Jung, Hitler was beginning to think for himself and come up with solutions. Roosevelt was another master mason, made so on April 1901. A bunch of men wearing aprons with a G for gravity over their testicles. Here we see Einstein standing next to Georges Lemaitre, the Jesuit priest who came up with the Big Bang theory.